Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here, and Shanxi is finally fallen. Pockets of nationalists up here. We are trying to attack, sending in reinforcements of all kinds. The Beijing pocket has finally been totally nailed up, and we are shifting forces south in this manner. How did wait a minute. Okay, now they have a good, they have an HQ, just checking. Shifting south in this way, we've shifted other forces from that Japanese forces crushing that pocket down to here, to our southern pincer around Shanghai, heading towards Nanjing, the capital. And of course we are still sort of combination of pushing in and holding here, but they're going to be pushed from the other flank and met up soon. So that is where we are currently at with our Hearts of Iron 3 Black Ice Japan playthrough. You can all go away after liking the video, of course. Like the video. That now you can all go away and come back for next episode tomorrow to see where we're at then. If you want the short version, or you want to see how we get there, you can continue watching. I do care which you do, but you should do the one you want to do the most. Maybe I should do that in all episodes, sort of give a sort of standard condition. Basically, though, the rest of the world is at peace. Germany, I believe, has taken Austria, yeah, and Sudetenland very early. Okay, you guys. You need to, looks like, supply here instead. Yes, we have made sure that there are a few divisions not attacking to hopefully hold off counterattacks. Okay, attritional warfare is advanced. Very good. And we're going to let that continue. No, we need to. Been letting my troops starve for reinforcements, so that'll help. And we have. Oh, good. Okay. I think they're both up here. Yeah. No, what am I doing? I'm supposed to be clicking here. Okay, who do we want to have lead this? Not a bad choice. Good job. I don't know if we can avoid these non-historical divisional commanders. Don't even know if there's enough, but oh, damn it, I did that wrong. Okay, well. Because what we want to do here is, well, it doesn't really hurt what I did. We're going to give all of these units to this unit now. No, not an armored guy. We'll save him for some of the few armored units that we'll have. We'll give it the same guy. And yeah, the armored guy isn't bad, of course, but we might as well save it for someone or for some division. And it's an alrightish division. It's not great, but no anti-aircraft and no anti-armor. Both help a little bit when fighting the Chinese. By the anti-aircraft more. Let's send them here. This way they can land, get a little bit organized, and then help push here. I don't know that we're... Got a couple of more divisions down here that I could throw in somewhere. One of them is actually pretty good. That one probably should. Yeah, let's do that. Because I have those elite forces. I don't... Until we get this area done here, I don't think I'm planning on any more invasions, because, well, either that or getting this linked up or something, and then we may do some more invasions if we have enough troops. What does Siam want? We give them money for fuel. Okay. Okay, they might be able to move and cut those guys off. That's my hope, at least. Now, just thinking about this, posting some on the Black Ice forum about coding, and there's a new, well, I don't know if it's new to me, shall we say, recent, though I guess it's maybe been around for a while, ability to step back a bit. Normally, in the way a lot of the stuff is coded is so that at the very first of the month there is a check made to see what events can fire in the next month. Conditions met. Like it might say condition is sometime March 38, but you also have to, well, no, let's say January 38. The 1st of January 38, this event will fire, but you must also hold Beiping or Beijing or Peking. You must hold this as well. So it will at the start of every month, it'll see if the conditions are met. You know, is it okay? It's after the right date. Does Japan hold this province number? They check by the number. Okay, and it does that at the first of every month. And so if you have something like that, and now if you do if you load an autosave, or you load a save after the first of the month, you won't get to see those events until it checks again and it goes, oh, well, yes, it is, so if you keep sort of messing it up, meaning like you keep loading autosaves, or it's various things, I could go into it, but it's unimportant. It'll just sort of delay it until the next check it can go through. It won't mean that you won't see it. It'll just be, something that may have happened. Oh, it may have also, you can stick in after 5 days. After the other, the first two things are met, and then 5 days. So it's sort of like, hey, after you take the city, 5 days later, you get the notification, so long as it's after January 1, 1938. Okay, and if for some reason, 5 days later, but on the 3rd, you save the game, 3rd of the month, and it didn't have that full 5-day timer, it'll then check at the start of the next month to see if it meets it, and if you go the 5 days. Okay, well, there's this new thing that you put in, and it's a bunch of 9s in the code, is that that I believe it will constantly check every single maybe hour of the day as you play the game. Should this event fire? 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 every single time. And my suspicion, and this is, again, I'm sort of talking about things that last day or two that sort of looking, as you put that in, and I'm not sure whether if you have like a, January 1938 type start, first time to check, whether it's even checking in January 37 or not, I don't know. Now you can have it fire only once, and then once it's fired, it should not be checking again in it. But if you don't have a fire only once, it may look for something and keep checking on it. So can be a problem, especially if there's a cooldown timer, meaning because then you have an event, you could say, oh, put this variable into the country's thing, and therefore for say 90 days. You see a lot of that in some of these illegal printing type or whatever things that pop up, and you choose which there does, and so it says not have this variable in it, so it waits, and so I think it's constantly checking. So I think doing this way, and this is the way a bunch of this stuff GGA is now coded, is putting a lot of stress on the engine, especially as time goes on. It's adding more and more of these things to check, and I'm pretty sure this code, at least this is the first I've seen this code, is mean time to happen. Some of you guys who know coding much better than I understand this, I'm sure, much more than I do. But the first I've seen this code was used, at least that I can remember seeing it, for Hearts of Iron 4. But this is still based off of the same Clausewitz engine, sort of. It's not the same engine anymore. It's sort of like, it's still a, like a V6 or V8 engine, but it has no relation. A modern V8 or modern V6 engine has very little relations to a 1930s V6 or V8 engines, other than that they're, a V-type alignment, and they are, 6 or 8 cylinders. I mean, beyond that, there's almost hardly any comparison. So, and it's, I don't know, and again, it shows you my ignorance for such a, modder, but I'm not that good of a coder. Basically, coders, I'm a monkey see, monkey do. I have to find an example of the code that I want to do, and then, okay, I take that, and then I may put 2 or 3 examples together to create what I want to create, or take the code and then just change the title of the event, the description of the event, and then I look around for the effects, and then I change it to the percent. I may find it increase manpower by +10. Well, I want it just plus plus 10%. I want to increase manpower by 2%. So I just I have to go find the codes, whether in the original game or other modders. Now I'm not stealing their work. I'm just looking for examples and then copying, pasting, and modifying it. And so to do this, I have to see sort of how it works, and then I can sort of do it, and then I learn what to do, and I know in my own stuff, and I normally do. I like to do copy and paste, so I don't do typos of my typing as little as possible. So that's how I do this. So I don't do this. So the first time I saw this stuff, and it's like maybe C++ that the engine's coded in that can do the inputs from our sort of text files. First I've seen it was involved in Hearts of Iron 4, and I think the Hearts of Iron 4 version of the engine is much more streamlined. I understand that they've cut out some of the problems. I know they've cut out a lot of AI problems and done some of that to really make things flow much faster. And I'm talking about maybe things like this: how often it checks, what's its process, how the engine flows through, and So I think it's partially the age of the engine, and so some of this stuff that's, we can say, good for Hearts of Iron 4 is, Hearts of Iron 3 can't handle it so well. Because I know that Hearts of Iron 4 loads faster than 3. So, I just... Okay, yeah, let's punch deep. And overrun, come on, keep attacking and stopping the attack. But, because I know a lot of you are playing with Third Reich events, I'm not on this, and GGA. So, definitely make manual saves when you can. Plan on any game I've played. I've had to go back and I've had saves get corrupted. And I'm not just talking about the save that fails and is 0 size. I'm talking about a save that is apparently functional and good, and you can load it and you can play it, but you cannot effectively ever save from that save. So always make saves, not just your autosaves, because the autosaves can get, and I don't know if there's a corrupt thing or a critical mass of some sort of corruption of the thing. And again, we know that is it U-bomb or something like that, type coding, it's not a font, it's, well, it is sort of a font, but it's a text type stuff. If you use that for some of the files in that have for in the description event for the event title or description, or historical generals names, those files, or we got a lot of stuff here, or used in OOB files, or used in the files for generating when we do unit the stuff like we did, new stuff coming out of the production queue. If you use any of those things, they sort of kind of work, but they're not appropriate. Part of the reason some of the people have used those is to put in correct national names and whatever that have funny characters, as an American, with the umlauts and whatever. I don't even know half of the titles for the stuff, emphasis and different things over words, and trying to do it correctly for the nation. That sort of got put into it, not by Third Reich events, I know, because to use that, you have to use that format for certain of the files in Hearts of Iron 4, so I had to get a different text editor because my text editor that I use to make Hearts of Iron 3 doesn't do it. So I did not introduce that. But in some of the Black Ice files and in some of the other mod files, because some of the other submods are simply copying and pasting and using the Black Ice files, those would work, but they're not right. So notice what I'm saying. They work, but they're not what is best, and we pretty sure that is something that eventually enough of it will cause save game and other stability problems. So I think there is with some of the bugs and some of the stuff with some of the saves, there is a critical mass situation, and it can so it isn't necessarily one thing that causes the save not to work or not to be able to, or introduce something, whatever, that so it'll work, so you'll save the game you can load it in, it'll work, it'll play, but when you go to save it, it always crashes on saves, or whatever, or you can't load the next save. And now there can be a specific thing that is wrong that will do that, but I also think there's a critical mass situation. So we've reduced a bunch of that going on, but so I've never gotten through a long game, we'll see with this one, that I don't have to go back and replay something because either a crash on save, and then I have to go back and load another save, or a corrupted save that I have to go back 3 or 4 saves to find a version that isn't corrupted too much and play through. So always have manual saves, but you don't want too many in your save game file, okay? That also seems to be a problem. I think it's a problem of when you're getting ready to save it, it sort of has to check all of the save game files to see if there's one with the same name. So it's sort of loading all the files, and the more files it has to check. And if you notice as you play on, the save game files will, I think, about triple in size from, say, 1936 Germany to 1942 Germany. It'll be like 3 times as big. So it's the war that's going on, because it has to save where every unit is moving to everywhere on the map. So once the Soviet Union and Britain and America and all this stuff are all moving units around, not just Japan versus China in here, but everywhere is constantly doing it. It's just that much more information it needs to save. So since it has to look through the save game folder, I think is what it's doing, is so that the more files it has to look, there's more delay, there's more chance of problems, and things don't work. So what you want to do is you want to move older saves out of the save game folder to some other folder that you named and designated. I just use Alt-Save in the same directory that the save game folder just doesn't look there. Not in the subdirectory of the save game folder, but in the same place as that folder, but just renamed. So that way you can store your old stuff to go back to, because I've never gotten through a long game without having to go back and find an uncorrupted save file at some point. So don't let them build up in your save game folder, but keep older manual saves so that you can go back and recheck things. Okay. Let's see. Chile. I got chill. Then unaccountable H and Lee. Chile. Gulf. Okay. Sort of like the plant, but spelled different. And the spice. Research efficiency is up 2.5%, and supply throughput is up 15%. Don't know what. Other than finally some effects for taking here, I guess. I don't know. Is up, but great. Just saw and saved a picture of Japan occupying some university that in Fuzhou or wherever in China. And I really have to wondered when I was looking at that, and, first I thought, oh, okay, well, this might raise their research ability. But then I thought, because it's also sort of, I guess, a missionary type university, I wonder if they were just occupying it and using the building and shutting it down. So I don't know that they would get any research bonus, because I don't know that the Chinese students there and teachers there were really going to move into the Japanese war effort and design effort. And some of that whole getting research in other countries as you get the territory. Now, of course, as we know, gotta remember where to go, but is varied by this thing, leadership modifier and whatnot, as you can see there. So you don't ever get unless you get national chorus. But a lot of that is taken from the very real Czechoslovakia. Basically, all the Czech arms manufacturers and all the designers go over to working for the Germans. I mean, in total, en masse, and they come up with new and improved things for the Germans. So we see that in other cases. So yeah, but I don't think there's too much of that going on in China that was helping leadership. Okay, so new German ambassador. Don't know why they have the picture. So put a new ambassador part of it. Okay, I think these are just sort of random things as opposed to historical. Okay. 1938 Historical Division Headquarters, Your Imperial Highness, the 21st near Tokyo. This event place. Okay, we got another headquarters to use when we want to. Okay. Chinese troops have defected after the Japanese first began their invasion of China in 1937. Each place the Japanese captured a collaborationist army might be formed and given various names such as Imperial Japanese Army Assistance Army, Peace Preservation Corps, police garrisons, and so on. Later on, particularly under the Nanjing Nationalist government, they were reorganized into a system of divisions, corps, and armies. During the Second Sino-Japanese War, the Japanese occupied areas was in continuous need for troops to suppress revolts and defend against sabotage to the Japanese supply lines, which diverted much of Japan's regular army manpower. In order to solve its manpower shortage on the front line, especially after 42 and in the outbreak of the Pacific War, and maintain rule over already occupied areas in China, Japanese began to employing existing local soldiers and recruiting local people to be responsible for occupied areas, public security, and accordingly the Japanese occupied areas puppet regimes established of northern China's Zhejiang Army and Nanjing Collaborationist Army. The various puppet regimes had nominal control over their own collaborationist army only, but the Japanese military officers were authorized to command and transfer any collaborationist army units they saw fit. Okay, we're dealing with a lot of propaganda here, and I want to emphasize this, very small ways, have tried to dig my way through it at different points. We have propaganda from both sides. I'm sitting here trying to think how to... There are definitely cases of units defecting, Chinese units defecting to the Japanese at various stages. There are various motivations. Some of the motivations are they never quite looked at the Nanking government of Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist government as their government. Modern propaganda, and I remember, I won't go into too much, talking to a Chinese woman living here in America. This was years ago. Oh no, Tibet is, they're Chinese. No, Tibet has always been China. No. And I didn't know how, she's more of a friend of a friend. I didn't know how much I should argue with it. And I didn't know how much she was giving me government propaganda to try to make her country look good, and that she knew better. You know, this is a university student studying in America. Or whether that's just what she believed to be true because she had grown up with that all of her life in China. Now, of course, as you could, I didn't really put on, and she didn't have a heavy accent, but a bit of a Chinese accent. But I was quoting her sentiments, if not her exact words. Probably not her exact words, but close to it, way back when. And so I didn't pursue too much on it. But Chinese propaganda to this day, and definitely it definitely, if not originates, but was strongly in the nationalist propaganda. This is all China. China. Well, what the hell is China? Is China a country or a continent? This is Europe. This is Europe. This is Europe. Is that what they're saying to me? This is Europe. Now, is that an EU member saying this is Europe and you can't be outside of the EU? Okay, so you're having a one-state continent? Don't acknowledge possible divisions between Portuguese and Swedes? You know, or is this all Qins? Because that's, China comes from Qin, the Qin Empire, which is sort of, I think, right around here. Or is this Han Chinese? Or, you know, okay, so I think you're sort of getting my point, is that there are divisions. And there are not always, some of them are ethnic divisions in that they're not Han Chinese, they're Tibetans or some of these other, you know, there's some down here, other ethnic groups that are supposedly, and I look at some of the photos and that seems to me of the people to seem have different facial characteristics. I mean, they still look generally Asian to me, being a, if you'll say, a Westerner or a European, but I can sort of see what I might in other terms describe as family resemblance, and I don't know whether these are family resemblances or whether these are because it's easier in Europe because most Portuguese aren't blonde-haired or red-haired, so you get red-haired much more is common in some place like Ireland or Scotland or some of the Celtics, but it's red hair is a genetic trait that is recessive, so you can be carrying those genes in other parts of Europe, and until you mate with another person with those same recessive genes, that then out pops red hair. At least I hope I have that right. If you want to correct my very limited understanding of genetics, you can. So it is, like I say, a recessive trait, I do believe, and so if one person has it sort of, you know, sort of dominant in their makeup in that they have red hair, but they mate with a person with brown hair, but they also have that red hair recessive trait, their child could have red hair or something. I don't know. Okay, but it's not very common in Portugal. They have darker hair in Portugal. Okay, well, Chinese or Asians basically all have black hair. I have yet to see a non-dyed person in any of these parts of Asia not having black hair or fairly dark eyes. I think the eyes may change more, and sorry for my ignorance, and it's just that ignorance, I don't know. But so the variations are more easily to see in some of the Europeans than we see in Asians. Okay, so I don't know how much of these different ethnic groups are cultural versus genetic, or a mixture of both. I don't know. But, and then I do also believe, you know, because there's the Manchus up here, which are basically seen as a different ethnic group than the Han Chinese. And whether you just see Han Chinese, shall we say localism or regionalism, northern versus southern, Cantonese versus whatever you want to call these groups up here, that modern China, again, I'm saying starting very much under the nationalists, moving into the communist ideology, that we're all one. How much that's changed in propaganda today, but how people may have very well seen it different, and very well may have seen an overly centralized nationalist government as more of a threat than a foreign Japanese overlordship. And the reason I say that, and you may find that sort of strange, and they're traitors, and they're whatever. Well, from a point of view, they're traitors. I remember, and somebody recently commented to an old tweet about, oh, well, they should tear down statues of Robert E. Lee because he was a slaveholder and a traitor to his country. And so my response was, oh, you think we should tear down statues of George Washington too, because he was a slaveholder and a traitor to his country? And by any reasonable definition of it, he was a slaveholder, and by any definition of it, he was a traitor to his country. Oh, but his country was America! Well, he was a traitor to his English country, that he had been a officer in its army, and he was a traitor to it. Now, he wasn't a traitor to his new nation. What was his new nation? Oh, wait a minute. He was also, before they declared independence, he was a rebel against the English, fighting the English, and requesting that they settle on and do that, whether they're going to declare independence or not. So he is a traitor to the English. Not just, well, the English see him as a traitor. No, he was a traitor to his nation. Now, he formed, along with the other founding fathers, a new nation. Okay? And hooray for that. But he was a traitor who forms a new nation, and particularly so because he was an army officer. Now, he was an army officer not in the regular British Army, but out in the colonial militia, and that is part of what sours Washington to the British, because he tries to and applies to get a proper army commission, and is turned down even after his good service in what the Americans call the French and Indian Wars. The French and Indian War. Europeans know it as the 7 Years' War. And so he, good service, wants to transfer from his colonial militia unit to being in the regular army, and is turned down. This goes back to Britain telling the Americans, no, you're not British. And sometimes I'm using the term English, and sometimes I'm using the term British, and I, for specific reasons, is no, you're not British. Scots are British. Welsh are British. Protestant Irish are British. But you American colonials are not British. That's what they were telling us in many ways. Before the whole thing gets started, Benjamin Franklin is a colonial agent in Britain, basically for some of the colonies to sort of be an agent for stuff. You could sort of say an ambassador would be sort of the term, maybe. But he, sort of that, that he's living in London, being a agent for like some of the colonial governments to help facilitate business and everything else. This is not a spy type situation. This is just, he's there. And he is at one point requested to come before a parliamentary committee. And he walks into that committee very much a British citizen. He has British citizenship. He can vote in Britain. He is a Briton. He walks out of it an American, because the way they treat him, and I don't know if anybody has any of the, if they were official recording of what was said, but this was not. I don't know that it was a public hearing, meaning everybody gets to show up in the audience, but I think it was a private. But it was going over this. And he walks out of that, and it wasn't so much of a personal attack, but it was more just, you colonials, you colonials, you colonials, and colonials, and colonials, and colonials. And he walks out of it an American, because he has seen that the British are not accepting Americans as British, if you get my meaning. Where if you were Irish Catholic, you were British, yes, and you were liable to be drafted or what. Well, they didn't draft in the army really, but you could serve as a foot soldier in the army, but you couldn't be an officer in the army if you were an Irish Catholic. There were a lot of Irish Catholic officers in the army. They pretended to be Protestant. Everybody knew what they really were. They showed up once or twice or 4 times a year to a Protestant church and went to services and claimed to be a Protestant. They denied their Catholic faith to be in the army. And a lot, I don't mean huge numbers, I mean a few, and it was commonly known. But if you were someone who was of that strong belief and prominent Irish Catholic, you could not serve in the British Army. Now, I also say that because they were serving in the Irish Army. The Irish Army, the Scottish Army, and the English Army were all three separate establishments as part of the Britain. And I'm saying this like in 1776. There was the Scottish Army. There was but they weren't. This is overly complicated. I'm sorry, but and so if you wanted to be an Irish Catholic officer, you had to go serve in the French Army or the Spanish Army, or I know the Venetians for a while had an Irish unit. There were various Irish units around the continent. You could go serve in against the British, or like General Keith and a few others end up serving in regular forces in Catholic countries and do very well. So Irish Catholics were not part of this British community, shall we say. And so the Americans are pushed out. And so this is sort of the thing that's going on, and it sort of gradually comes to be aware of more and more and sinks into colonial society that they're not British. There are some they can't even go back to Britain and be British. They're looked on as foreigners. Cousin foreigners, shall we say, but foreigners. Okay, this gets back to the Chinese. So are these people, traitors? Well, of course, the nationalist Chinese are going to think they're traitors. But that they're serving the Japanese. But they may be seeing that, well, the Japanese are a foreign power, and they're going to meddle in our affairs, but they're going to only meddle in our affairs half as much as that central government in Nanjing is going to meddle in our local or regional affairs. And so there are a lot of political divisions within China that, and I talked about earlier in it, the two military academies that you had to be a graduate of to get anywhere in the nationalist Chinese armies. Not that to be, lieutenant somebody or captain somebody, but to really get promoted and really move up the chain. It was very cliquish, and these two different academies were sort of opposed to each other. And so you will find armies and divisional generals, quite likely, in what we are sort of, creating, let's say, the Ma clique or something, that aren't connected to that. And so is the Ma clique more worried about China dominating them and messing with their lives? The Ma clique is, which I found out, is very much associated with Chinese Muslims. Not all are Muslims, and not all the leadership is Muslim, but a significant element of the leadership of the Ma clique is Muslim. Chinese Muslims, not Arabs, not other peoples, but Chinese Muslims. Are they more worried about China ruling them or Japan ruling them? Now, they don't want anybody ruling them, so we've talked before about these regions. So once you get into an area that you've now defeated, and you have units that are still intact that are in various other garrisons, what are they going to do? Take off their uniforms and go home? Try to retreat to nationalist controlled territories? I'm sure both of those things happened. Others might go, hey, neither the Chinese nor the Japanese are socialists. We need food to eat. So we need money to pay for the food. So maybe we can get paid by the Japanese. And I think there's a lot of that going on too. Now, for the units. Now, the garrisons, and the police garrisons and everything like that. There are a lot of recruiting, because we know China generally, but worse in a war like this. Back to the food question. Somebody willing to pay you a relatively decent wage, give you food, And you're now have a gun to I don't know if protect yourself is right, but because you're not really protecting yourself. But you're no longer subject to the whims of other people with guns. Shall we say that? Because obviously, by picking up a gun, you've now picked up a side, and the other side may try to kill you, and you realize that. So you have a lot of people deciding to fight for what is, as time goes on, apparently more and more a legitimate government. And all you're doing, and now you're not necessarily hating the nationalists. Oh, I want to go kill those bastards. No, you're just going, oh, you mean I'm supposed to guard this railway bridge? Okay, cool. I'll do that. Somebody attacks the railway bridge. I'll see what's going on and I'll figure out at that point. If it's 10 guys with machetes, I'll probably shoot them. If it's, 50 guys with, thinking of like a squad of 10 people. If it's 50 guys with a lot of heavy machine guns, we're probably going to run away. It all depends. So they get a lot of these people, and there is a lot of figures like we see in Russia that are former Chinese politicians and military leaders. Some are embittered in that they, before, after, or during this time, after, not after the war, but after their area being taken, they personally feel slighted by Chiang Kai-shek and his clique, and his clique was a clique. So they now have personal hatreds. Others, I think, see the Japanese as winning, so they want to be on the winning side. And I do think a few of them thinking like, well, the Japanese here, they're a reality. If I cooperate with them, I will mitigate the worst of the problems and try to do the best for the people under my thing. So we get political leaders that give legitimacy to the Japanese military government. And so more and more people are recruited into this. And so, yes, we want this. We'll take this. Put the Chinese to use. Collab number 9. Okay. I think those are like, well, I don't know what those are. No, I've seen that photo before. I don't know how it is. You have submachine guns. With the Japanese, it's fairly rare for submachine guns. You've got a German helmet there. That's a Japanese style helmet. Though you do see, yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about this. 500 money, 500 supplies. Okay, we'll take that. And so, there we go. Collaborators. So, we're going to leave them right there for defending. Beijing from rebels. Because I don't know that they're going to be very useful on the front lines at this moment. And we're going to... If our lines expand, which they very well might, we may just want them as, to hold a province and not attack, or attack along with a lot of good units, shall we say. Okay, I'm just sort of ignoring it because the weather. I know it has its effects. Third Moscow show trial. Let's shoot ourselves in the foot even more. We are sending supplies here, aren't we? Yes, okay, good. Don't know why you don't have any, but... Okay. And this is sort of why we need those troops. Okay. Just making sure they didn't appear somewhere that we need to address. Here they are. They appeared here. Okay. I think we'll win this fight, but it's a little bit annoying. Okay, good. They can move now. Advance, advance, advance. Okay, I want to look at terrain. Yeah, see if you can advance into that city. That would be good. They're going there already. You guys... Yes. No, you guys... Yes, they have engineers. Okay. So these two there. These guys here. Okay, when they get... Well... don't know what to do with here because... do I attack... Do I try to send these guys down here, because these are an okay-ish division, to support this very good division, and should I attack with this division here? We try to come down and probably better, because these guys are probably going to win here fairly soon, even though it's not looking so great at the moment. Or do I counterattack to stop this way here? Because if I move these guys to here, they can help push. Yeah, that would be a better plan, because if I can push this way, we can hopefully create a bit of a pocket up in here and trap out some guys. So yeah, so let's go here. Let's start the advance by pushing here and into here. Just make sure you flow as well as you can. And I'm not going to wait for the... when does the headquarters show up? 62 hours. No, we're not going to wait to 62 hours. So we're going to move the militia unit there. This doesn't have combined arms bonus. And it was... maybe that's not a good idea, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, so we got these guys, but they're in no shape to attack. But they're here now. The other reinforcements show up down here. Yeah, these guys with these elite light infantry as well as engineers. So this is classed as an engineer group for the what do you call it? These arms groups. Whatever you want to call it, you know, for obviously it's for combined arms, armor, and infantry and cavalry. They're classified as engineers. These, I think, guys here, as opposed to the other ones are classified as light infantry group, special forces, so that you could combine the two of them. So you could have both. You could have these guys specialized light infantry and these guys elite light infantry in the same group and get a combined arms bonus. But since we have these guys added to that division, they're going to add to that attack and then try to move up to there. Hopefully push this. Deeper, deeper, deeper into things. Okay, you're doing okay, but yeah, let's push. And there are add mixed motorized support, regular motorized mixed support to that. And so they've got armored cars, which gives a certain amount of hardness, not quite tanks, but for this sort of war, sort of kind of tanks. Without maybe really being tanks, true, but okay, yeah. How do these go? I guess they've defeated them and defeated the commies, but then the nationalists sort of get to control that province or something. I don't know. That doesn't seem quite the thing, but whatever. Do we have enough? Yep, we got plenty of. And we are producing more supplies. Just don't know why we're not getting supplies to here effectively. For these guys waiting for fuel. We got lots of fuel. Are we? Yeah. Are we still selling fuel? Maybe we should stop selling fuel. Oh, I guess we're not selling any fuel because we are importing some, I do believe. Yeah, we're importing some, but we're not selling any. Okay, good. Wanted to make sure of that. Okay, how are we doing up here? Okay, you guys, you're still pushing well here. Oh good, you guys made it to there. That's very good. These guys are coming to fill that gap. Well, push through these guys. Finland, we would give them money for fuel. Okay. Okay, we are here now. Okay, they're gonna go that way very shortly, so these guys are attacking that way. So they turned the tide of that battle very fast. These guys, well, they're getting hammered, but they're still fairly well off. keep getting organized. Okay, you're here. Looks like they're moving already into there. So these guys, they can come down here. And yeah, no point in delaying. Let's push into there. Sometimes you just, well, you can artificially just hold along, say, this river and try to create a pocket, and that is a reasonable idea, but I'm just more of the belief of the idea that we should keep pushing, keep the enemy off balance, and not. I've watched some of these guys do some of the YouTube Let's Plays, and they'll literally say, just like, leave this whole line here and have a fair number of units holding that line, and I do mean a fair number of units, not just like a single unit that barely holds the line, but just that, and artificially swing in all the way around them and never push anywhere else, and to create the big encirclements. Just not my military philosophy. It may work in the game, but and that's not a bad thing if it, you know, to do it if it works in the game, but it's just not the way I see how I would do this. Sure, try to create pockets, try to go around and do it, but if it doesn't work, or I mean, if you can make other advances, make them. Overrun, push. Okay, we're gonna stop this attack. Yeah, major defeat. Okay. We're doing this so that when they counterattack here, we will, but we also have that as a fairly well-off unit. There isn't like here that I really effing want to push over this river. I wonder what it thinks it's trying to protect. Is it trying to protect here, or with all these things, is it trying to protect here? Because now obviously I'm a human and not a computerized AI, but, and again, I don't know how well an AI can evaluate things. The idea that you're going to hold this open here, and we can look and see the importance of this province, and definitely see that it's important. But the idea that you're going to hold this open while you can't take these, provinces back, to me is a futile thing. Now, again, like I say, I know I'm a human and I can evaluate this maybe better than the AI can, but if I know that I don't know, have in production some heavy armor units, you know, infantry tank units or whatever, and once I get those, I'll be able to push them out. Or if I've got a bunch of units over here that I just need to get over here, and then once I get here I can push these guys out, then yes, there's reasons to hold this. But if you can't, so this goes back to the fighting here in Italy. The fighting in Italy, well, okay, there's one the self-delusion factor, and two, the you can't see any alternative that is doable factor. But I'm closing my eyes here and thinking. The Allies land in North Africa, and Germany rushes down a bunch of units to try to salvage the situation. Well, because of various things, they can't push the Allies out. whether it's the Allies' control of the sea, simply the sea being there itself, though of course many of us look at the sea as an impediment. A nation like Britain or the US sees the sea as a big highway. It's not, oh, can we get across the water? It's no, the water makes it easy to move supplies. It is much harder for America and Britain to land supplies here and get them to here than it is for them to simply bring supplies to here via the sea. Now you may, oh, well, that's, of course, very apparent. But that's not to the way of German military thinking. Not that they can't see that, they can. But they are moving everything via rail. And yes, occasionally along Norway they're moving because of the lack of rail, because there is no rail connection through here. So they have to use the sea. And yes, they do use some sea transport, but they're seeing everything as land transport. So they're wanting to get stuff from here down to here via rail, okay? You know, via the land. I mean, they're using trucks and wagons too, but it's mainly they're seeing railroads. Okay, so some people see this island, like again to this thing. This island is an island fortress, and the sea makes you safe. But to a naval power, man, this is so vulnerable. It's all, the sea's all around it. They can just simply land forces anytime they want to, because it's not, you know, it's not a wall around the whole thing. And so anytime anybody, whether it's Russia, oh, wait a minute, Russia does, I think, they tried to get here once. I don't know if they did. Tried to claim it at one point. But Russia could land an army here. France could land an army here. Kingdom of Sicily can land the army here. Turkey, which does land an army here during the Ottomans do. The Great Siege of Malta. You know, anybody, and Napoleon lands an army, you know, does so. Of course, Britain lands an army. Anybody can land an army at any time. Anybody can. America can land an army. China could show up with enough, you know, fleets, because if you look at some of their, you know, Grand Fleet expeditions back in sort of the Middle Ages for Europe or whatever, you know, obviously there isn't a Red Sea connection here, but they could theoretically land an army here at any time they want to. It's very vulnerable. So sea powers see this as very vulnerable. Now, it's also very useful because it's a place to bring your ships into the harbor and have a lot of guns and protect it from a larger fleet, you know, but it's very vulnerable. Now, a moat inland is good because land armies don't necessarily have lots of boats and things. You know, it's a different sort of mindset. And so, is an island a defense or is it a vulnerability? And so, in fact, effectively, Africa is an island to Italy and Germany, in that they don't have land connections to it. So, you know, in a strategic military sense, obviously it's not a limited self-contained area, but it is an island in that sense. And so they're unable to defend this. They're unable to throw the Americans out of North Africa. Okay, that doesn't mean that you're going to lose the war, because whether it's the Allies' ability to control the seas, whether it's the your inability to move forces across the seas just because you don't have enough ships, you know, in this part of the world. You know, maybe Germany has a, you know, huge shipping fleet up here, but they're not down here, or Italy doesn't, or whatever. So maybe you don't have enough ships, whether they control the sea or not, because maybe you have air power that is, you know, able to escort it, but you can only move so much at a time. Or maybe it's the lack of infrastructure. You know, yeah, you've got supply to here, but trying to get supply to here for a mechanized armored force that's needing to guzzle fuel and ammo, you know, because the machine guns are firing 24 hours a day, just firing. Artillery's just firing. And you don't have any trains or good roads. You know, you got a really bumpy road that you're moving along at 5 miles an hour to get ammo to here. And the Americans are pouring ammo in via this port. who's going to win the battle right here. The Americans are going to win the battle here. Now, maybe once it gets to here, if the Germans can pour in, if they can, not saying that, because the Allies did control the air and the Allies did control the sea, but if we're doing theoretical talks here, if the Germans could pour in ammo here and the Americans could pour in ammo here, but the Americans have that same 5-mile-an-hour road to get ammo to the front, the Germans can win here. So, but like we see the Allies do not control the seas. So, okay, but that doesn't mean the Allies get to control Berlin or can control Berlin, or by the time they get somewhere, the Allies haven't built, or the Axis hasn't built submarines or more aircraft or whatever. So losing North Africa doesn't mean you're going to lose the war. Losing Sicily, because it's one Italian controlled at this time with just some German reinforcements, they lose that, and that's again a contained island situation. Okay. Then you have the situation of the Allied landings on Italy, and Italy goes out of the war. Okay, I get that. That's sort of like, oh shit, the Italians give up. We've got some divisions. And they are actually sort of had made both preparations to support Italy fighting the war and realizing that Italy may crumble at some point. And we have to take over. Whether they thought they would change sides or just simply collapse is two different things, and they both change sides and sort of collapse, sort of do both. But so okay, I can sort of kind of give you some of the initial landings down here that they're unprepared. They're organizing, training armies to go fight in the Soviet Union, and they're having reserve forces, some of those that they're using to organize and train, to defend against possible invasions of France and other places. And then, oh shoot, we need to send in forces. Okay, now once they do that, and then I will grant you again, some of this terrain down here has very limited railway connections. That's why the Italians themselves continue to do a lot of coastal shipping around the Italian coast, is because the Italian trains, as you know, the trains run on time, weren't necessarily considered reliable. And if you look at an actual railway map around here, it is a bit maybe different than, we can't see here the infrastructure, sorry. The infrastructure levels aren't necessarily very good, and they're also fairly vulnerable in that if you blow up the rail line across the narrow, a bridge that is going to be hard to replace. And the British were doing those both in commando raids and shelling from submarines that were popping up out of the water, and airstrikes and other things. That to get more supplies you need to use coastal. But even in peacetime, there was a lot of coastal traffic just because the Italians were still building up their railway infrastructure. So they were doing a lot of that anyways. And so, okay, maybe we can grant the idea that the Americans get to land. Does Messina have two ports? Or I guess one of these is Reggio Calabria. Okay. So maybe we can get the idea of a isolated front down here that, again, the sea power of the Allies can move in enough supplies and to simply pour in two or three more divisions, whether they be infantry divisions or panzer divisions or whatever. There's just not enough space on the front line, if you will, to add more units, stacking penalties in real life kind of things, that you're just, because of the quality of the opposition, just because of the air power and the sea power, you just can't quite easily push them off. Okay, I can grant you that. And that, again, is sort of an opportunity thing that maybe you can't deal with so well because Italy's collapsing. But by the time you get, by the time you get to the Anzio landings, now of course you take Rome the day before D-Day, so that sort of gives you the time scale. But that you haven't either the Salerno landings, so they also did, by the time you get to the Salerno landings, and okay, again, I will grant you that you're dealing with a sea power and their ability to land in other places. And here's a good example. If you're watching my Hearts of Iron 4 campaign, playing as Japan, there was an Italian collapse. The Germans had previously taken out the Soviet Union, but there was an Italian collapse there with, I think it was an American landing in Sicily, all done by the AI. They had lost North Africa. The Americans invade in Italy. Italy collapses. They go north of Rome. Germany, seeing this, and since this is at least for a while, was no longer Italian, the Germans pour in forces here and retake all of the northern parts, and then push down past Rome. And then up here, there's another non-scripted American invasion up at Livorno here, at the port there. And they create, and we looked over and saw this, create a bit of a pocket here. But then after a while, checking back, the Germans have counterattacked and pushed them out of here. Whether they destroyed the units or the units were able to retreat, I don't know. But the Germans were able to push them out of this pocket. So this shows that with American naval power and the ability to concentrate, I don't know, a few armored divisions against either an undefended port or a port that just has a division of some sort in it to defend it, they're able to push in it. But since the Germans are not fighting in the Soviet Union anymore, they've conquered it, they're able to come in and push the Americans out. That shows me in that Hearts of Iron AI versus AI European warfare, the Germans are able to push the Americans out, but because they don't have much of a fleet, they're not able to, say, push them out of North Africa. And at this point in that game, they're down to here. The Americans are holding down here, still holding Sicily, and they're also holding the southern half of Sardinia in that campaign. The Americans are holding that. The Germans are holding in the north. Though this territory is turned back over to Italians, but it's all German units. So, when Germany can't push the Americans out of the Salerno, and then they push into Naples, and then we know the famous Monte Cassino campaign. Once you can't push the Americans back out, and true, this is we're still talking Italy. I'm talking geography and infrastructure-wise. Yeah, but you can't push back. You can't even make advances. It is only a delaying tactic. You're done. The Germans should have realized that at that point, you're done. Now okay. Wonder weapons are coming! Coming soon to a theater near you. Wonder weapons. Okay, yeah. I guess there's a lot of, and then self-delusion and other things we're talking about. So that tells you, though, that if you can't push them back out, you're done. Now, what do you do if you can't push them back out? Wonder weapons are coming. Okay. I get that. And that gets back to Albert Kesselring. And the Gothic line, and I forget some of the other names. And Albert Kesselring is the, I think he's an air marshal or something, a field marshal for the air eventually. Not Reich Marshal, because that's Goering, but an air marshal or whatever, because Goering was an air marshal before he was a Reich Marshal. He was an air marshal before the war starts, I believe, and he becomes Reich Marshal only when they make all the field marshals in Paris after the fall of France. But, so he's Albert Kesselring, Luftwaffe, but Albert Kesselring was an artillery officer in the German army in World War I. So he's a fully qualified German army officer. Yeah, you say it's World War I, but all of the German army officers of, higher ranking were Army officers in World War One. And just because you're doing Air Force doesn't mean you don't have general knowledge of improvements of capabilities, and especially if you're the German Air Force, who is designed to tactically support the Army, your understanding, modern motorized warfare can come along quite well. So he is a qualified Army officer. Yeah, I think a captain or something in World War One, like a lot of the other ones. So he's qualified for his sort of joint command. We're not just getting a pilot who knows how to drop bombs now commanding ground troops. We're talking a guy who has deep experience in ground fighting. And artillery officers understand the combination of using artillery for defensive purposes as well as using artillery for progressive, if you will, ground offensives. In not necessarily, I'm not saying he does or doesn't understand the idea of flanking maneuvers and, sort of Rommel's maneuver warfare. I think he does understand it, but it's sort of their training is, and you also look at World War One, as frontal assaults supported by overwhelming artillery that suppresses the enemy, that allows your troops to move forward. So he understands it from both sides of the operation. So he understands what the Americans are trying to do. He understands what he's trying to do, and so he realizes that wonder weapons are coming. And he's dealing with the Americans, and he doesn't have the forces. Because, again, I do believe that had the Soviets collapsed, it would have been different. I don't know if what would have happened. I really don't know. But if you can, it's not, down here it may be, stacking penalties for more divisions. You never got to the point of Germany and stacking penalties along here. He just wasn't given enough forces, and with whether it's the partisans as well as they're learning at Salerno, the ability to, and then later at Anzio, I think there were some other smaller landings too, but I'm not sure about that, sorry. That you have to sort of have depth of forces to deal with reaction to other things. So you're not going to be able to concentrate all your forces on the front lines and push it out, because he just knows he doesn't have enough forces. So this is getting back to what we were talking about here. So he understands the delay tactics that are necessary. Now he understands, I'm sure to some degree, whether he wants to admit it to himself, that without wonder weapons, and by this time it's less and less apparent of any soon victory against the Soviet Union, without either one or both of those things happening, you're not going to win the war. So now if you do get wonder weapons, or if you do defeat the Soviet Union, you can get enough troops to maybe go on the offensive. But so he understands the idea of, which Hitler doesn't. Hitler doesn't understand the idea. So the idea is you hold here, the Gothic line, however you want to draw it here, I don't know exactly. And then, well, they've turned our flanks. Well, retreat back to here. We'll retreat back to here. You're just trying to delay and make them organize up and make them not just land 25 guys on a boat somewhere and call, they've turned our flank, we got to retreat. No, make them land, a corps or two. And then, they've turned our flank and retreat. So they've got to both be able to hold and put pressure on the front line and get together additional forces and boats and ships and all that stuff. So that all takes time each time you're doing the additional landings. Even if you're simply at some point taking the forces that were holding this line, putting them on boats, and after you get here and you turn the flank here and they however much escape out, this becomes the new front line. These units move to the port here, land in this port, and do this all over again. It just takes time. He's delaying the idea for the wonder weapons or defeating the Soviet Union. Otherwise, you're done. You're not going to win the war. Yeah, I know we were talking about this, and I did get sort of sidetracked. But China AI sort of kind of knows what it's in its production queue. And is it going to be able to push out? Well, obviously it should see by now that no, it's not going to push these guys out. These guys are both attacking and defending and seeming to do it well enough. But they also seem to be, at least here, able to defend okay. What would this be if you had a few more units here, including these guys here? So since it's apparent that they're not going to push these guys out, they should be going, oh, how can we defend here? Seeing what's happening here, they should be going, how can we get the hell out? They're not. Now, AI programming, and this has gone on too long, I know, long episode, is beyond me and how you evaluate this. But this seems to be beyond Paradox's ability. And yes, I repeated, Frederick Wasserman, and used to be the head of Paradox, and now the CEO of Paradox. He's still a major primary shareholder in it, I think, the company. And he stepped down from CEO and now special projects guy, I guess is what he's doing, and turned the CEO job over to somebody else. So he still has a lot of influence in the company. I don't think he was pushed out because he's taken the company forward to success. I think it's a matter of he wants to get back to doing game development and not managing a business. Again, this is all from just what I'm guessing about public statements. And he tweeted that, hey, what showed up when he tweeted, what was, when he searched for Steel Panthers. The classic, when I searched for the Steel Panthers classic game, this is what came up, and he had a picture of the sort of, I don't know if it's faux, no, it's really heavy metal, sort of the comic heavy metal band called Steel Panthers. And somebody said, "Oh, it'd be great if you redid the Steel Panthers thing," which was originally an SSI product, and I remember when it first came out. SSI is long gone. And, somebody, oh, that would be great. And I'm guessing that maybe that's what he was thinking of doing, was, thinking that, well, maybe Paradox should redo Steel Panthers. And I posted, God, no. Don't let them fuck that up. Or F that up, or whatever I said. Because right now it's a Matrix product, and they're doing great, and they seem to be able to do good combat AIs. Matrix seems, at least in my playing it, seems to be able to program AIs to know when the hell to get out of pockets. And when not. And understands this stuff well enough that Paradox just cannot. Paradox, at this scale, at unit scale, does not seem to understand how to do combat AIs. It cannot. It can understand, oh, this is one province. Create all these units into an army here, and it sits here and move these big armies around big provinces around the board. It seems to be able to do that. But this is why, since they went from Hearts of Iron 2 to Hearts of Iron 3, Paradox is biggest failing, and it just can't seem to get it. And again, going purely from public interactions, they want to build a good AI that can do this. They seem to not understand that you don't need to do that. That you can build scripted AIs that are good enough to deal with humans and do that. Because, again, Matrix can do it. I played a bunch of these Matrix games, and their AIs seem to be getting it. But I also know that they do a lot more scripted plans, and I think they're taking a simplistic out, and Paradox refuses to try to do scripted stuff because it thinks it can do better. but it hasn't shown itself the ability to do better. So I'm wondering what's the problem with that. And I've sort of brought that up very publicly with them. Again, I want to say that. And I've not gotten much replies on that. You know, what makes them think they can do this? Because they haven't been able to do this before. Why could they do it in the future? And I don't know, again, because this could be on me. They could be just like 95% of the way there. And all I got to do is figure out that last 5% that's complicated. And then, boom, China's going to be invading Japan and doing all kinds of stuff. And it's going to be outthinking me. And it's going to be a pain in all hell to do it. And they may do that. And that'd be lovely. I'd love to have difficulty settings based only on how smart the AI is. That's what I would love. I would love difficulty settings based upon how smart the AI is, and at not super hard, but at hard, I would have a real difficult time trying to fight it. That's what I would love to have. And on that note, we're going to end the episode here. I want to thank you all for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. Please post comments, questions, suggestions if you haven't already. Also subscribe to the channel. See you around next time for more Great Hearts of Iron and me rambling on about things. Thanks so much.